right. Well, hey, everyone. I'm really excited today to introduce our special guest, Vanessa Baker from Socrates Academy. I've known Vanessa for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and we had a common background, and that was exceptional children. She was the exceptional children's director at Socrates Academy at the time. She was part of a mastermind book study, and we were studying The Advantage, right? It was Pat Lencioni's book around organizational health. And I'm really excited because she's a great leader. She was a great leader at the time, and she has this amazing opportunity to run this very effective charter school in Matthews, North Carolina, which used to be K-8 for a while, but now you are enjoying the fruits of your labor and expanding all the way to high school. So Vanessa, welcome to our highly impactful, effective school leader podcast, the Principal's Office podcast. It's great to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Awesome. And if you're watching on YouTube, then you get to see Vanessa as well. So let me make sure we got her up there. So Vanessa, take us through your leadership journey. You and I both have exceptional children's backgrounds, right? So I'm just always super curious about how someone takes that next, step. So where did you start in education, or why did you become an educator, and how did you make it here in the CEO chair?
So I am one of those people that have always wanted to be a teacher. In school, I was a teacher assistant. I went home, played with my dolls, and retaught the lesson. But in college, it wasn't until I took an introductory class in special education that I realized the passion that I had for that, and got my bachelor's degree from UNCC in special education and taught for a while in Cabarrus County. Most of my time was in self-contained, working with students who have behavioral disabilities. And then towards the end of my time in the classroom, I did the resource setting. Still in Cabarrus County, I was an MTSS coach, which was really that way that I moved outside of the classroom and began to explore adults and adult learning and working with them. And I had a principal at the time who said to me, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a principal?" And I had, but it was that vote of confidence that, like, oh my gosh, someone that I admire and think is a brilliant principal thinks I could do that. So shortly thereafter, I enrolled in a program to be a principal, and then found my way right after that, after I graduated, to Socrates Academy as the EC director, then moved into an assistant principal role, and then here I am today.
I love that. We could unpack that first, 2 minutes for about 2 hours, right? Because one, someone saw something in you, right? That's always huge as a part of our world is we need people to sometimes, believe in us or tell us, right? We may have some inner self-efficacy, but it's when that really influential person in your life comes forth and says, yeah, you would really be, great here in this role. And obviously they were 100% nailed it on that one. And then, the other piece, just with exceptional children, right? I always found when I was an exceptional children's teacher, we were exposed to a lot, right? The bigger picture parts of the school. Mm-hmm. So how did that, come into play? Because I was never, an exceptional children's director. That's what I always wanted to be, but I never had that opportunity until just a few years ago as an interim. But how did that play a role when you started to see like the whole school as a big part of, matching your skills and strengths to be an effective administrator?
I think it was very helpful because you see it first through the lens of an EC teacher, and that is its own unique lens to look at something through. But then able to see the big picture, because sometimes, when you're in the classroom, you don't see that high level view of everything that's going on. But as an EC teacher and EC director, I was able to see the impact of, one decision over the campus, or, things going on with students and how that impacted just outside of my classroom or the EC teachers' classrooms that I was working with. But it also, that entry point into kind of that mid-management level only gave me the desire to do more. And so to start, like, I had a really good influence within the EC department and with some regular ed teachers, but it only like lit that fire to do even more. Like it wasn't enough for me.
Yeah, I love it. And so, a big part, I know you love to read and you love to learn. So what maybe were you reading back then that was helping you through this bigger picture path, right? Or really starting to see yourself in a much higher role. You remember?
That's a good question. So when I first came to Socrates Academy, the curriculum background that I had was vastly different than the curriculum of Socrates Academy. And we're fortunate that on our board, we have some of the best professors in the country. And one of them is the top professor in literacy. And so when I came here, I really had to study what was not being talked about a lot at the time, the science of reading. Well, today you hear that everywhere. But I really felt like we were on the forefront of that. We were having those conversations years and years ago. But I knew nothing about it because I came from a whole language background that was very different. So a lot of my reading was preparing me to be a curriculum leader. And that's one thing I always say to any leader is like, you have to spend that time developing yourself as a curriculum leader and in your own leadership. But at the beginning here, it was hard because I was going home and studying like how to teach reading, and I thought I knew, but I didn't. So I had a lot of reading.
Yeah, I love that. And my real understanding of instruction, I was a self-contained exceptional children's teacher my first 5 years. So my students had autism, and so we were doing, Edmark, like the reading programs that were more visual. And then I ran into the SRA Reading Mastery Program, and I started to like, oh wow, look at all this. There is a science around it, and what great exposure. And it's always great, you being a charter school principal, and as many of us know out there, charter schools are independent public schools governed by a volunteer board, and they have all these skill sets and resources, and you were having multiple professors right there to really be able to talk to and help mentor and guide and resource you on how to do that, and how great to learn from the actual individuals that do the research and study, right? Very, very rare, because mostly we're just learning from a book. And we don't get to ask the person who maybe wrote the book or was part of the book or part of the research around the book to help them get there. Well, talk to us about Socrates Academy. So tell me about its mission and why it was created, and who does it serve?
So our academy here was founded. We have 3 founders who actually came out of the Greek language. They knew each other through the church. But our primary focus is that we are a partial Greek immersion school. So we're one of the only ones in North Carolina, and there's only a handful in the United States. So it's a very unique program, but it's also not just about the Greek language, though that's important. It's about that multicultural education, critical thinking skills, having the ability to have discussions at a high level. We do that through the Socratic seminar. Our students also, starting in middle school, have the chance to take another language. It's either Spanish or Chinese, they get to pick. And then into the high school, we're really taking that multicultural emphasis to another level with our global studies. Good afternoon. We have our booster thon people here. So now that we have high school, we have 9th and 10th grade, we have a global studies diploma that they can get. One of the things that I'm most passionate about Socrates is our core values and striving for excellence, and setting that bar higher and higher each year. We do good things here, but we can always get better, and that's something that our founder, Mr. Poulos, talks a lot about. Is just reaching for excellence every day. Spending time celebrating what's gone well, but also moving forward and creating new opportunities for excellence.
Yeah, and that's one of the key, the number one indicator of a high performing school is this sustained mission and vision and clarity. And to have the founder of the organization still part of the conversation is really important. At least ask questions about and what did you think, and is this what you envisioned for the school. Can you talk more? Because I know, offering all those languages and having the Greek influence in your organization, not everybody who teaches at your school was born in the United States, were they? So how do you guys bring in all these international influences to your organization?
Right. So we have a partnership with the Greek government for our Greek teachers. Now, some of our Greek teachers were born here and they may be native to Charlotte, but some people don't realize that Charlotte has such a large Greek population. But some of them do come from the Greek government and they'll be here for 3 to 4 years and they can reapply to stay for an extension. But it's really great to get them to come in and learn from them. One of the reasons or one of the things on their visa that they have to do while they're here is to teach us about their culture. And so that's a huge part of Socrates is not only learning the language, but the culture, the food, the dancing, all the nuances of the Greek culture. So they come here. We have, I think 5 this year from Greece, and some of them were principals in Greece. So, it's an excellent opportunity for me to learn from them as well.
Yeah, and I just love that. So if you're out there listening to this, podcast, everybody, or watching us on YouTube or wherever you're with us, there's more ways to bring, resources into your organization, right? I mean, you're really fortunate to be able to have employees, but you could always Zoom people in now. I mean, if COVID's taught us anything, that there's access all across the globe now, yeah, to impact your student base and your teacher base. So okay, I love that. I love that aspect. And yes, I've been really privileged to be with your staff a couple of times, and they're always fun. That is for sure. They know how to have a good time.
Yes,
and so as the organizational leader, so now that you've grown from a teacher to a mid-level leader, and now you're the head of an organization. And how many students are there?
We have around 900 now.
900 students. And how many staff members?
110 around
okay.
that.
All right. So again, you are a CEO of a multi-million-dollar enterprise with those people. So what do you see now as like the difference in your daily work from the head of the organization compared to maybe what it was when you were a mid-level leader? What do you think are the most important things that you do every single day?
So thanks to you, honestly, and the mentorship that you provided to me, I've really been able to make sure that I'm living into the role and having these responsibilities that only I can do. So we talked about the mission and vision. So I spend a lot of time re-emphasizing that with staff. I talking to students about that. I had a student in here earlier who were talking about our honor code, our core values. So that's something that I'm really passionate about, but also developing the leaders. So a lot of my time is spent with our instructional leadership team, our assistant principals, our Greek director, so that I'm pouring into them and knowing that if they're getting better as a whole, we're getting better. And then really spending time in classrooms is where I get my rejuvenation from. Sometimes it can be a difficult job where there's, you go from one problem to the next, but getting into the classrooms is really important for me to see our mission being lived out and see the fruits of the leadership team's labor.
I love that, because I was going to ask you about the number of decisions that we have to make as organizational leaders, and you just kind of hit on that. I rejuvenate myself by getting into the rooms, by being around why I started this role, to start with. Such an important piece. But then you also talked about, building an effective leadership team and, a growing adult. So what are some of the key attributes that you look for in, some of your team, or maybe they're not in your building yet, to be part of your leadership?
I think the first thing is that commitment to our mission and core values of Socrates. Like I've said already, I'm 100% behind the core values of Socrates Academy. And it's something that anytime I get in front of staff, parents, students, I'm constantly talking about. And that's something that they have to commit to internally. And I can't make them commit to that. I can't, train them into accepting our core values. It's something they just have to. So foremost, it's do they embrace the things that we say are important to us at Socrates? And then also, are they coachable? Are they going to take feedback? And, are they willing to continue to learn? I was talking with our human resources director last week. This is a job, once you get in a chair, you can't just say, all right, I'm here, I'm done, I've arrived. You have to continue to grow and invest in yourself. And I need people on my team who are willing to invest consistently in their leadership, because when we stop growing, our school is going to stop growing.
Yeah. So were the core values there when you were hired as the head of school, or did you guys, so can you take us through the process of how you adopted the core values?
We really started looking at our mission and vision when we expanded to high school a couple of years before we made that jump to add ninth grade. And one of the things that came out of that discussion was, here are a list of our core values that we want to make sure that when a student leaves Socrates, they have these core values, or when a teacher is teaching, that they have these core values as their professional guide. So they include diversity, equity, justice, that striving for excellence, hospitality.
You have very, carpool. Please report to the light.
Just very
never ends. That's right.
Yeah, it's carpool time.
That's right.
What are those things that are important to us here at Socrates?
Yeah, I love it. So what are some of the core values?
So they are commitment to excellence, and some of them are in Greek, and I won't try to say the Greek. Respect of diversity, equity and justice, moral courage, moral virtue, ethical behavior, hospitality, empathy, and kindness.
Yeah, excellent. So so the education plan. So I know that since you came on board, you've had to do some work, right, to realign what students learn and how we know that they learn. And so if I were a prospective employee of Socrates Academy, or maybe a parent, how would you describe the education plan to me, and why should I come either and teach there, or why should I send my child there?
So we have actually created, once we came through like our revised mission and vision and our core values, like a portrait of a graduate. What do we want our graduate to look like here? So for parents, what I tell them is that we want them to have that global awareness, that multicultural competency, that they can walk into any job post-secondary and be successful. Yes, they'll have the languages, but they'll also have these core value competencies that will make them successful wherever they go. So I talk a lot about that with parents, and then with teachers, again, just that commitment to our rigorous education. We want the very best for our scholars, no matter what level they're on. And so, commitment to the North Carolina standards, making sure that we're using evidence-based practices. That was a revision to our mission when we expanded to high school, was putting that in there and saying, we're not just going to go find these random programs to implement in Socrates. It's going to be vetted, and it's going to have evidence behind it. And, that's what we're going to use, only the best for our scholars. And so that can sometimes be a learning curve for teachers who come from districts who may have 200 curriculums, and you can, choose from a multitude of things. Whereas here, everything is very vetted to make sure that it's the best.
Excellent. Hold on a second. So I want to make sure that I capture this right, because John Maxwell talks about communication is just by far the number one skill required to advance as a professional. But he also has a book called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. So through the Socratic method, like I've seen a few Socratic seminars in your school, like how was that experience, and how do you get teachers to really buy into that model of not being the sage on a stage, right? Because you have to be the guy by the side in every moment in those. So how do you teach and equip them to be prepared to do that?
So to your point, I think it starts at the interview level when we're interviewing talking to prospective teachers, is this something that they're willing to do? If you're very direct instruction minded, which I believe does have a place in the classroom, but if you aren't willing to take, a step down off of this stage, then this isn't the place for you to teach, because we're wanting our scholars to lead the discourse in the classroom and be able to have opinions that they can confidently share, and also be able to disagree in a respectful manner, without necessarily being disrespectful of the person. So we do a lot of professional development at the beginning of the year with our staff, but most importantly, we get them into seeing teachers who are really good at the Socratic seminar, because it's something I can give you a PD on, in 30 minutes, but you really have to see it, and then you have to go try it. And so we have expectations about how often we see this in the classroom, how often that they're working on it. And it just builds upon each other. So we started in kindergarten, and by the time you come over to a middle school classroom, you can see this really great discussion that's happening. And often I'll sit in a classroom just really amazed at how articulate our students are. And I'll think, wow, like I was never that articulate in 7th grade. But we see it no matter where you're at in the school environment, inside of a Socratic seminar, of course, but even in a discussion with a scholar, if I'm talking to them about their behavior and saying, why did you do this in Miss Jones's class today? Well, they can articulate their point very well and tell you exactly why they did it, with their evidences. So I think we're really building great communicators here.
Yeah, I'm really excited as you get to that full, K-12, to really watch that 13-year experience. It's going to be huge, and what those kids are going to be able to do for generations. Because, at times sometimes we curb curiosity, in education. And to be successful at your school and to be successful in life, you have to be insatiably curious. You can never stop asking questions and learn it. So I love that.
Yeah, we really want to nurture. That's in our mission, just nurturing their curiosity. And I think that parents who come here are very appreciative of that. That we're not just at the front of the room telling them what to think,
right?
But we're giving them that information and allowing them to form their opinions in a nurturing environment.
Yeah. So culture. So let's talk about your learning environment. And culture is built on rituals and ceremonies, and so what are some of the rituals and ceremonies that you guys have on an annual basis?
Well, I think I have to talk about the Greek culture and how, it's such an instrumental part of everything that we do here. We have multiple celebrations throughout the year celebrating their holidays. We have dancing, of course, we have food. And so that's huge. Just the, I think that's what really makes Socrates, is that influence of the Greek culture. But then also we have things that we've historically done here, or that I've started since being principal, to help our climate and our culture within our staff. So coming up in a couple of weeks, we have our annual fall festival that's just for the staff, and they can bring their families. One thing that I wanted to do a couple of years ago was provide an outlet to have fun with the staff and their families, because a lot of families of teachers give up a lot. So I wanted time for them to be able to come and have fun. So they do trunk or treat, we'll cook out, and we do various things like that throughout the year, and just trying to keep that family atmosphere that Socrates has always kind of been known for, really continuing to celebrate that and do different things to encourage that.
Yeah. How would you, you had talked about, nurturing and how would you, if you were out in the community, how would you want to see a Socrates Academy middle schooler or maybe early high schooler present themselves to the community? How would I know that I ran into one unless I saw the crest on their chest, right? But
that's a great question. I would love to ask my scholars that too. I think that I would want them, we talk here about being respectful and responsible. So I would want them to be respecting wherever they're at, acting responsibly, coming in with our core values. So, having that justice and equity mindset of wherever they're at. and just being a giver to their community, and making an impact outside of Socrates. And that's something we talk a lot about, particularly starting in middle school, but in our high school, is giving back to the community. They have volunteer hours they have to do. So then, not only being a part of the community, but having an impact is what I would hope to see.
Yeah, and I would imagine just being good listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because to be in a Socratic, seminar and be successful in that model, you have to learn how to listen to people. Mm-hmm. Another huge skill that is required in leadership, and building relationships with others, for sure. So, I know, COVID was a big impact on every school, right? Not a surprise. And I know your organization went through one big challenge because of a policy that was adopted. And so you had some turnover. So what have you found has been some of your best leadership practices in hiring really skilled, behavioral, mission-based, values-based humans to come work at Socrates?
Whenever we have an interview first, we do a screen interview, but when we think, okay, we have a candidate that we really want to get to know and talk about, the first thing that I do is form a committee of people that are going to be connected to the position. So if it's a third grade teacher, I want third grade teachers on the committee, EC representatives, not only so that they can be a part of that decision making, but also it helps the candidate meet who their peers might be. And sometimes the candidate might say, well, this isn't a good fit. But so that's where I start. But then I also, again, thanks to you, I've used a lot of your behavioral based questions to be able to ask them, specifically what they would do in a variety of situations. My favorite question to ask is the one about, if your best friend, former boss, and it's not enemy, but it's something like that, person who doesn't like you, critic, were in the room, what would they say about you? That in itself, I feel like you could ask that one question and know whether or not you're going to want to hire the person or not.
Yeah.
Because it shows you, number one, how they can think quickly on their feet, because that's not a question I'm sure is on the internet for them to come in and be ready to answer. But it just tells a lot about them. It tells their vulnerability, how, particularly with the critic, how they take feedback. So really the questions now, the last couple of years, my questions have completely changed. Whereas before, there's a time and a place to ask, like, okay, how are you going to teach a lesson? Mm-hmm. But if you're here, you've been through a college prep program, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because we're going to do a demo lesson anyways. But the interview is the part where I can find out who you are as a person and are you a good match for Socrates? And sometimes, they're great teachers, but maybe they're not going to be a good fit here. So it's really been really helpful to use those style of questions.
Oh, that's great. My favorite is tell us about a time that you failed in your leadership. How do you lead differently now, right? And you can tell quickly. Mm-hmm. Lots of times people will talk about how someone else failed. I'm like, okay, well, you've already told me a lot right there. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love what you said too, because it's about investing the time, because mm-hmm. the last thing you'd want is to hire someone who doesn't fit in your organization. I've heard you say that about 3 or 4 times so far in our short time together. And that's just, critical. You can't just hire a body because you'll be repairing on the back end, and you got to take the time to find the people that will best, fit your organization.
And that I was having a conversation this weekend with someone about that, because it's so tempting right now with the amount of teachers that we don't have, that to just say, okay, they're breathing their body, I'm going to put them in the room. And you get into those points where you feel like you're hiring desperately. And every time I've ever done that, I've regretted it. So regardless of how desperate I feel like I am, really holding true to what our standards are. And we had a teacher leave recently due to medical issues. And I met with the grade level parents and said, I have an interim in here right now. And it may work out long term, it may not. But I want the best for your kid. And I'm not willing to just hire out of desperation right now. Yes, I need someone in the room, but they have to be quality and they have to be good enough for our scholars. So that's something I've learned over the years. Don't get too desperate because you'll regret those hires.
Yes, it'll take you much longer to get them out of your organization and way longer to repair all the things that they've undone that you've tried to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you had talked about this at the very beginning about, building leaders in your organization. So how do you build an environment for growth for the adults in your building?
One of the things that I'm committed to, and I think it was the last 2 years maybe where I have really taken that on as a passion of mine, is growing those who are here. Because I'm not going to be at Socrates forever, but I want to leave Socrates in a good place should I ever leave or when I ever leave. So things that we do book studies together. We come together and watch. Most of the time we watch it. Now it's on Zoom, like professional development. So we've invested in your coaching programs. And then we come back and we talk about it. It's not just this isolated, okay, I'm going to see Doug Lamov and learn about Teach Like a Champion. No, you're going to come back and we're going to talk about it at the table to see, okay, what are our takeaways? What can we implement here at Socrates that works? What are we going to leave on the table? So really just having those conversations as a group collectively, but then also I meet with those that are on our leadership team one-on-one. So like my APs, I meet with them as a group, but then I also meet with them one-on-one to have those conversations about their growth as well.
Such an important piece because, if you've read Simon Sinek's book, Infinite Game, right? There's no finish line to learning. There just isn't. But many times we find, I've got my degree, I'm done. I've got my position and I'm done learning. But what I heard you talk about was it's not just about going and seeing Doug, Lamov, which would be incredible in itself. It's about, okay, what are you going to apply? What are you going to change in your practice? And what are you going to go teach the rest of us? And keeping that continuous ongoing cycle of reflection and growth is so important that we miss sometimes in education because we're busy or we do all our in-service at the start of the year and it just goes away, but it's a constant loop.
I think as leaders, it's important to model that for the teachers too, that that's the expectation that we have here is that we're continuously learning. So an example of that, we have the opportunity now as charter schools, which I was really sad about at first that charters were left out of the leaders training or the letters training, sorry. And so now we have this opportunity and I read about how much work it is and it's an incredible investment of time, but the teachers that are representing Socrates are really excited about it. And I sat them down and I said, that this is like, you really have to be committed because there's hours and hours of work behind this. It's great PD, but it's a commitment. And they were so excited about that. And so I feel like, I was excited that they were excited because that means that, they're also committed to their growth. And so I'm hoping that they're seeing that that's just the culture that we create here. Is, you can't get your job and be like, okay, I've arrived. That's not what we do here at Socrates. We're continually trying to get better. And, I think that I learned that honestly through my relationship with our board of directors that, at first it was kind of a hard hit. It would be like, wow, like, is it never good enough? And, I would take them this data that was fantastic. Yeah. And I was so proud of it. And they were too. But then it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do better next time? And so it's really the last couple of years that mentality has really shifted here where it's like, okay, we're going to celebrate for 24 hours, the good stuff, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and it also goes back to your hiring process, right? Hiring growth minded people. And, I think that's a big misconception. Teachers are tired, right? But they love learning.
Right.
And they love being better for their kids. And sometimes we answer questions for them as organizational leaders. Oh, well, they just can't take on more right now. And I'm like, well, why would you stop them? Right? Why would you hinder their growth? Because I remember as a very hungry mid-level employee, I wanted opportunity. I craved opportunity. Feed me, And so those are the things we have to, remember that, yes, some of our people are full and their capacity is full and they got things going on at home, but the more that we could expose them to and just, make it flexible even, right? There's tiers of, learning. Some folks will go all the way through the book study. Some may read a little bit, right? Some may come to one, a session, but just that little bit of growth can go a long way. And it seems to kind of permeate in your organization, right? I mean, it's kind of, you build this wave of, yeah, we're all trying to get better. Just like we want our kids. That's all we want for our kids every day.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, teachers aren't asking that things like getting better professionally be taken off their plate. They're asking for other things, right? Like, and that is a good thought there. Like, they're not asking for, to not learn as much as someone else. It's all the other stuff that they want off their plate. So that's something I try to do. So, if the teacher's going to do letters training, I want to make sure that she has professional development days built in for that, so that she's not burning herself out,
Yep.
And it's not impacting the classroom and the kids.
And you yourself, you're a member of our Empowered Executive Inner Circle, right? So this is a weekly mastermind opportunity where you're in a growth, program and you're being stretched at times, or you're, mentoring other people at times. And so, what are some other benefits that you've gained just from being in a group of like-minded leaders?
It's very helpful to know that you're not alone. As a charter school leader, particularly at an independent school, it's just me. I don't pass other principals at district meetings. I don't have that opportunity. So it's helpful sometimes if I don't even have a question that day, but I can come to that inner circle and hear all the other questions and hear that, sometimes they're struggling too, because it can be somewhat isolating as the lone principal at a school. And just I tell people all the time, like the amount of knowledge that I've gained just from you and the other people in your organization, just being able to say, hey, I have this question, or I'm really struggling with this. Well, here's a resource for this. I've been through this before. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Here's this resource. Or having you come in and work with my faculty, and you've worked with the leadership team before. It's very powerful, and I think honestly it's one of the reasons that Socrates has been so successful the last couple of years, is because you have helped and the organization has helped grow me and my leadership team's leaders, because that it's just so pivotal that we all continue to grow.
Well, that's really kind. And I do it because I love all you and I love to watch you all just excel. So I learn more from you guys than probably do from me. So I appreciate that. And so let's hit two more spots because one, you're a great mom and you're a busy mom and you're ahead of school, right? And so talk about a parent engagement. Like how has Socrates maintain such a high level of a parent engagement? And what does that look like at your school?
I think that our parents are committed. Again, it goes back to our mission and vision here. They are bought in and committed to Socrates. And so they want to do everything possible to keep Socrates being successful. We have our parent faculty involvement, which is kind of like our PTO. We call it PFI here. And they help with various initiatives on campus, but are really here to support the staff. They, come out and they fix the Gaga pit and they raise money for this, but they're helpful to each Thanksgiving. They buy every teacher family Thanksgiving dinner for like Thanksgiving Eve dinner. So it's like pasta and things like that. So they're supportive on that end. And then we also have the requirement of the 36 volunteer hours a year. And not every parent meets that. I would say the majority of them try to get there. And we provide various ways that they can. As a mom, if my daughter didn't go here, it would be really hard for me to volunteer because I'm working during the day. But so we can send things home. We have weekend work days, opportunities for them to come into the school and volunteer. That was something that was really missed the last couple of years with the pandemic, as we kind of shut the doors and didn't have volunteers in. for a while, but now they're back, and it's just another level of engagement with them. But I think, you can have involvement where they're in the building and they come to curriculum night, but engagement where they are working in partnership with the school is what we strive for here.
Yeah. And over the last couple of years, I mean, you've had to expand, and you're learning about buying buildings and buying land and negotiating things. So is this, you and I were talking about earlier, like the difference maybe between a district principal and a charter school principal? Is this wearing a hard hat? Like, are these things that you ever thought that you would do before? And what have you learned in the process?
No, learning a lot about architecture and building and construction. That is not my strength at all.
Mhm.
So that's where it's really helpful to have good people around you who can help you in these meetings and, explain it to you in layman's terms. But yeah, it's definitely very different. And there was no master's degree class on expansion.
Yeah. I mean, 900 students. So you're managing a, I don't know, a six or almost, $7 million budget, maybe a little bit more than that. I mean, that's a heavy level. And a lot of people don't understand that, charter school principals, like, there's no central office for us to reach out to. Right? We are fully responsible for all the public's money. And we have this little tiny team. So, you got your CFO is there with you and your VC director, and you're all trying to make the best decisions as possible. So what is, so as we end up here, right? Talk about that. What do you do to create harmony and, balance in your role? And what's maybe some advice you would give other brand new school leaders out there?
Harmony and balance. I think for me, each day coming to work, I was thinking about this in my quiet reflection time the other day, that I feel so fortunate to be able to get up every day and go to a job that I love. And I tell staff that here all the time. If you are dreading coming to work, because I've been in jobs where I've cried on the way to work, and I never want that for any of the staff. And so I feel very blessed to get to come in and live into my passion. It's not really, yes, there can be really stressful days, but it's not work for me because I really enjoy it. And just feel so fortunate that I get to do the work with great teachers here, a great leadership team, parents and scholars. Like, there's no other place that I would want to be right now in my life. So, if I were talking to other leaders, I think that would be my big thing. Like, find somewhere where you can make an investment and you feel connected to, so that you can live out your passion. My daughter is here at Socrates, and I know that she's getting the very best education possible because of her teachers. And I always tell the teachers here, they make me look good. Like, they could run this building probably without me. So I'm just very fortunate to be where I am. I turned 40 this year, and so I reflect a lot lately, with a big birthday like 40 coming up. And so I'm just very thankful that I get to do what I get to do each day.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice, just to be, grateful for the opportunities that you do have.
Right.
There's lots of people out there that don't have the privilege, because the pressure is a privilege.
That's right. I think I remember, I don't know the quote by heart, but it's there are days that I prayed for the problems that I have today. Yeah. And so, I wanted to be a principal. That was my big goal. And then some days you sit in the seat and you're like, really, this was what you wanted. But so I just remind myself of that I've worked hard to get here, and that it brings me great joy to be able to do the job.
I love it. Well, we're going to end on that, praying for the problems I have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Oh, I've lost my voice here. Thank you, Vanessa, for the time that you gave us today. We just kind of scratched the surface. So listen, everybody, if you're out there, go to socratesacademy.us, and you could reach out to Vanessa. And I know they love having guests, and you got to come to the Greek festival. They really have some great, fun out there at Matthews. And if you want to improve your academic program through the art of asking questions, what a great school to learn from and a team to learn from. So thanks again for giving us 45 minutes of your very, very busy day. Now get out there and go hug your daughter and go out there and keep on making a difference. I'm really proud of you, and I'm so happy that you're part of our school leadership programs, and you add some really great resources and value to the people in our inner circle and outside of it, because you're always willing to help if I ever push someone your way. So, and you'll be Dr. Baker soon. So we're going to be working and looking at that steps.
Yeah.
soon. So
Ask me about that in a couple of months.
that's right. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks so much, everybody. And hey, listen, everybody, if you liked anything that you heard, make sure you share out this episode and hit the subscribe button. My son's always yelling at me. You guys all know you got to hit the subscribe button, because every week he gives me like a key performance indicator. Dad, you didn't get any new subscribers this week. And so please help me look like a better dad and hero in my son's eyes. So we all have those problems nowadays. All right. Thanks again, Vanessa. Bye.